Hello. Welcome to another live show, another live Chino's Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and most importantly, getting into the chat and letting me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. And always give me the courtesy of a little bit of a, hey, Jess, I can see you and hear you because we have technical difficulties here all the time. And I want to make sure that I'm not talking and you guys cannot see me or hear me. So if you guys can just give me that little bit of a check, I'd really, really appreciate it. We have lots to talk about today on the show. We have a done deal. We have to talk about this Thierry Henry versus Arsenal fan base situation. James McNicholas is also given a little bit of an opinion based on I think it's an opinion on how Havertz will be utilized next season. And that's obviously caused a little bit of an uproar, and then links to Leroy Sane. So make sure you guys are, like I said, liking the video, subscribing to the channel. Thank you, Redemption. I really appreciate that. So, and Blaze, thank you so much. So where do we even begin? Let's just get the big news out of the way. And the big news of today is that Arsenal have now completed the signing of Martin Zubimendi. He is free to go do his medical. I think Arsenal, everything with Arsenal kind of happens in a one in, one out type of situation. Jorginho's exit from Arsenal was confirmed yesterday. And then today, now Zubimendi has completed his deal to Arsenal. Yesterday, I told you guys that I wasn't scared about this random report that came out that he was waiting on Real Madrid because there were too many reliable sources that had confirmed that it was not a matter of if Zubimendi signed for Arsenal, it was just a matter of when it would be completed. David Ornstein speaking with such confidence, as well as Fabrizio Romano, made me feel like we didn't have anything to worry about. And so that would be our first signing of this summer window, which would happen is actually before the window is even opened. I know that they've kind of drip fed this signing to us over the past couple of months. I do think that Arsenal wanted the fans to feel like there's some positive things, but I think this is a good signing. I do understand that it's not exciting because it's a DM. It's probably one season too late because we've been linked to him for a million years, but he is a very good player, a highly sought after player, a player that we thought was going to end up at Liverpool, so a player that Xabi Alonso was really fond of and wanted at Real Madrid. Xavi Hernandez has spoken about what a great player he is. Mikel Arteta also loves him. I know that we have questions around Mikel, but there's enough minds in the game that really do rate this player. And although I feel like his main strengths are not things that are super obvious, I think we will see a difference in the way we build up and the way that the tempo is controlled with Zubimendi. So, and he also, like we was talking about the other day when I said, I think he'll take the number 3. He's the number 3 at Sociedad. So even though I know it's not a midfield number, I would not be surprised if he took up the number 3. So I am excited about this signing. I'm glad that it's happening early. I'm glad that it's done and dusted. We don't have to think about it anymore. And we can move on to more pressing things like, the attack, and hopefully the next signing is not a goalkeeper. But we will see. Ruak says, to me, it's exciting. Best 6'8" on the market. Yo-Yo says, signing Zubimendi is a coup. I just hope he's as good as the hype. 100%. I was very panicked when I thought Liverpool were going to sign him, because last summer I did feel a lot stronger about him last time around. More, I think it was just more due to the fact that, he had a better season with Sociedad last season, because Sociedad were really kind of off the boil this season. They were like a consistent European side for a while, and then they've dropped off this season. But he was coming off of the Euros. He, was highly sought after. When you watched him play, you could see what people were looking at. So when Liverpool almost got him, I was like, not only is this a bad look because we've been linked to him for so long, but he's just a really good player that we should be getting, So I think it's a coup. I hope he's as good as we think he is. And I think he's going to have a bigger impact than people think. That being said, we have so much to do going forward. So hopefully, this allows Arsenal to focus on the things that I think Arsenal fans will be more excited about. Jordan says, do you think this is a good warning sign for the rest of the window? Not necessarily. I think it's because it's something that technically should have happened a while ago, and it's something that they've kind of drip fed us, and the signing was pretty much done in January, which it is before Berta was even really involved. He got the rest of it done, but all the groundwork was actually done by Edu and Jason Ito. So because the majority of the work wasn't necessarily done by Berta, I don't think it really says much about this window. The fact that it's sewn up before the window starts is kind of a good thing. But I think with the other players that we're looking at, mostly the striker and the winger, I think that will give us a better indication of the direction our window is going in, because this was probably going to get done no matter whose butt was in the sporting director's seat. Because it was already done, like, essentially. Yo-Yo says Zubi needs to accomplish what others have failed to do and bench Partey and replace Santi. Big shoes to fill. But I think, I saw people saying that like Arteta only brings in the non-technical Spanish players to Arsenal, or those are the only ones that he likes. Now, we only have one Spanish player in our team that plays in outfield, which is Marino. So I don't know if that's a fair assessment of how Arteta sees the Spanish players and like who we should get and who we should not get. Because to me, Zubimendi is a very good technical player. I don't see any sort of lack technically from him. I think he's good at keeping the ball, pretty press resistant, good passer of the ball, punchy, good mind on him. I think he's a quintessential Spanish midfielder, if I'm honest. So, I think we are adding a technical skill. I think we are adding more football IQ. I think we are adding a little bit more, not necessarily athleticism, but maybe more agility, somebody that's a little bit younger. And so I'm excited. Zubimendi, to me, looks like a really, really good player from the outside. How he's going to be for Arsenal, we shall see. Boy says, you guys aren't serious, man. Zubimendi bossed England. No one remembered Rodri was injured. What are people worried about? You're not even going to remember Partey this time next year. Nicholas says, I'm an Arsenal supporter since 1997. Arsenal fans need to realize that if they want to hold Arteta responsible, they get Gyökeres and still come second. They can't blame Arteta. O'Malley says, one thing about Arteta, he's going to wait and go get the players he wants. Listen, he really wanted Zubimendi, and we know that. And I'm kind of glad that he got him, because I'm like, okay, now we can see what you really want to do. I think Arteta almost like jumping at the opportunity to buy Jorginho, even though he was like older and at a rival and all that kind of stuff, to me makes me feel like that is the type of DM that he really likes. And so I'm not saying that I don't think that he likes Partey. I do think he likes Partey quite a bit, but I think if he had to build the perfect DM, it would probably be more in the Jorginho mold. I think that's what he likes in the sixth position. So Zubimendi to me feels like kind of like a Jorginho, kind of like a Vitinha, kind of like one of those types of players, good tempo control, punchy, good technically, kind of press resistant. Georgie wasn't the most press resistant, but he didn't lose the ball that much. I think he's got it. Rodri says, as an Arsenal fan, it is reported Arsenal and the Kroenkes have received 173 million from the Prem money and Champions League money. Would you think the Kroenkes will give Berta of that money? Honestly, I don't know. I think Sky Sports had reported that we have over 100 million to spend. So I'm going to guess like 150 million to spend off top. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking about the reports and how they're coming out. And, Ornstein said that, don't expect a quick resolution on left wing. And then there's other people saying that we may need to sell someone in order for the left wing to come in. And so my mind is telling me that we've spent about 50 to 60 million on Zubimendi, and then we have about 100 million left. If, we end up giving any of the strikers that we probably want to, then it's probably going to be a little short for us to get the goalkeeper, the defender, and the winger. And that's probably why it'll take a minute because we'll probably have to move somebody on. So I'm thinking maybe about 150 million, and then we have to sell. I have seen the Sane links. We'll talk about that. Valeria says, when are we going to keep and sell videos on the players, Jess? We will do that later on today. I wanted to get this stuff out of the way. So I don't know if you guys stay up like later or not. It may be a little bit. Well, you guys let me know. Do you guys want to do the keep sell later on tonight, like after the Conference League final? Like in 4 hours or so, or do you want to do it tomorrow morning? Because we can do it tomorrow morning. That's fine. But all this stuff had come out that kind of like shit on my plans to do the keep sell loan today, if not a little bit later. So we can either go like 10 p.m. UK time, like after the Conference League final, or we can go tomorrow earlier, like around now, if you want to. So let me know, because you guys, like, I don't know what you guys do. You guys might go sleep. Errol says today, Blessing says 4 hours, Jess, I'm a UK resident. I know, but like, is that how late is that for y'all? Rodney says the selling of Fabio, also other players along with Kroenke finances. Yes, it's official, like for real now. Outside of Arsenal announcing it and him, he is going to do his medical now, so it is done by all intents and purposes. I know some people still need to see him in the shirt, and I totally understand that, but it's done. The Zubimendi is an Arsenal player. Yo-Yo says Arteta played the 6 at Arsenal, so every player he signs for that position, including Rice, although people forget, matters a lot to understand his view on the team. Jess, why does it take so long to get a player over the line? Other teams move quickly. Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, Man United. Honestly, I don't know why Arsenal takes so long. I think they have a lot of people checking it off. I think Tim Lewis and Richard Garlick have a lot to do with that. They're money guys. They're guys that are protecting the Kroenkes as well. So I think it just has to go through so many people, and it needs to be a unanimous decision. I think in the past, they haven't been unanimous decisions. It's been, this is an Arteta signing, this is an Edu signing. And I think as time went on, maybe the Edu signings or Edu's options weren't liked by Mikel, so he would just go with nothing and wait it out, like you guys said, for the person that he wants or whatever. And so I think now maybe they're going to try to do the unanimous decision. And so that still might take a long time, because coming to an agreement on one player around 4 guys is probably going to take a long time. So I think just the way that we do things is, if the manager doesn't trust the sporting director implicitly, you can't get things done quickly, because there's always going to be pushback. Whereas at other clubs like Man City and Liverpool, the manager trusts the sporting director more, and the sporting director, I think, has more power. So they have to kind of deal with what they get, but what they get is usually fucking bomb, So I think that's kind of what it is, Saeed says, boy, why keep 2 players? They're not great in their main positions. Ameli says, Zubi playing with Odegaard and Marino is good for integration. AFC says, everything that Henri said was 100% correct. We'll get into that in just a second. Yo-Yo says, my research informed me that Zubi is defensively class. I don't get the Georgie comparisons. The Italian needed Rice, Conte near him to perform his best in the Prem. I hear that. I think I'm more thinking like on the ball, when I think Jorginho is a better tempo setter than Partey at times. Because Partey for a long time was very vertical and took a lot of risky, like he would make a lot of risky passes all the time. And I thought Jorginho was a better tempo setter. So when I think of Jorginho, I think of somebody that knows when to speed it up, slow it down. And he has a good range of passing from like right in that, like in between the halfway line and the box, like right in those areas, he can find like the right types of passes to like switch the play quickly or punch it between the lines or a little scoop pass over the top. I think that's what I think of Zubimendi. Off the ball, I do think he is better off the ball, and he's somebody that you can rely upon to get those tackles in, somebody that can stop those counterattacks. So I agree that from a defensive standpoint, they are not the same, but on the ball, I think he has a lot of those Georgie qualities, and I really do think he's a lot like Vitinha. Boy says, if you in your head and believe Havertz still starts if we sign Sesko, you ain't right. Well, yeah, we have a lot to talk about. So Zubi, Zuby is done. So now let's talk about what's going on with Thierry and Arsenal fans, because he was on whatever the thing with This Is Football or whatever podcast, and he had a couple sound bites that have gone viral today. And I'm not gonna lie, it's gotten dark. I think in the past, like, Thierry has said things that have really ruffled the feathers of a lot of Arsenal fans. Like, did I love when Thierry was up there, when we were doing our, in Champions League, and he was saying that, Odegaard needs to do more and he's not doing enough? No, it stung, but at the same time, he wasn't wrong. I don't think he was necessarily wrong about Martinelli either, but Thierry Henry in the past and as of recent has, when asked, been critical of where we are. And I don't think he's necessarily been mean or lied or toxic or like intentionally trying to rile people up. I think that a lot of his thoughts mirror what a typical fan of the club would think if they are not attached to any sort of narrative or agenda. I don't think it's some of the main questions that have come from Arsenal fans and outside of Arsenal over the last couple of seasons is, why don't they have a striker? Why have they taken so long to try to get one? And a lot of that stems off of the disappointment of last summer, when we were really meant to get one and we ended up with Sterling. Now, he said something to the effect of, Arteta didn't get a striker. Instead of getting a striker, he got Sterling. I do have a little bit of feel like that's not 100% correct. I think that Arteta did want a striker and we wanted Sesko, but we couldn't get Sesko. And whoever Edu was giving as alternative options, Arteta didn't take the bait. He didn't want those players. And so at the nth hour, Edu or whoever decided to make sure that we got something. So we got Sterling last minute because we were super short. I don't necessarily feel like Arteta said, no, I don't want a striker. I want Sterling. Now, is Arteta culpable in some of the reasoning why we don't have a striker, or why we felt like it was okay to go through a window and not get one? Yes, because his trust and love for Havertz made him feel comfortable not getting a striker. And that's, to me, I feel like that's more of the problem than Arteta sitting there and saying, I don't want a striker, I want Sterling. That is not true. But the fact that we kind of got away with it last season and it was like, okay, Havertz did pretty well. Instead of going, whew, we made it, it's fine. He felt more confident that we could go without a striker and not as desperate to get one, because it should have been a non-negotiable that we got a striker last summer. But it was negotiable because he believes in Havertz. He had found a way to utilize Havertz in a positive way, because that signing was something that he had to convince people that we needed. And so I think that's more my criticism of Mikel, to be more specific, is that I understand why people are frustrated by that comment, because I don't think anybody truly believes that Arteta said, no, I don't want a striker, I want Sterling. But we ended up with nothing. And we know that Havertz is a reason why he felt confident or comfortable not getting anything else when Sesko was no longer an option. Because Sesko re-signing the deal, or not necessarily re-signing the deal, but not wanting to come because he wasn't sure he was going to get the playing time. The fact that there was no other options after that makes me feel like Edu was bringing things. Like, I think Edu, there was like a report that came out that Edu wanted Munoz, that plays for Fulham. He is the backup striker to what is his name? The one that got the head injury against David Luiz. That he's his backup, right? Arteta didn't want him. And so this is where I feel like and this is just me reading between the lines and trying to understand the relationship between Edu and Arteta. I don't think they hated each other. I don't think that it was like some big blow up. I think as time went on, and Arteta wasn't getting his first options, and Edu was bringing subpar options that he did not want, Arteta, instead of saying, I'll take option 2 or 3 or 4, I'll just go with what I have. And that became problematic because it meant that the squad was thin, and it made it so that, we had options in the squad that we're utilizing that don't really fit, like Havertz, somebody that's not going to get you 20 goals a season. So I can understand why people were frustrated with that particular comment, because it didn't feel like that's exactly what happened. But the reality is that Arteta is somewhat culpable, or his hands were not tied behind his back in regards to us getting a striker or not last summer. They just weren't, they just weren't. So yeah, I understand that. He also asked questions around the hamstrings, the hamstring situation. Why is it that we have so many hamstring injuries? And he said, as a player, that usually means that it's something in training. And this is, again, something that a normal Arsenal fan, somebody that loves the club and is concerned about the injuries, that would ask a question like this. Why are we getting so many hamstring injuries? Now, some people are like, that's just brain dead because, and you can look online, I'm not lying. People are saying it's brain dead or stupid, because it's just a football problem. Everybody's getting injuries. So it's not, an Arsenal problem, it's a football problem. But ultimately, when it's a footballing problem, it's up to the people in the club to find a solution to make sure that we are not at the greater scale of that we're at the lesser scale, meaning that we have done things to mitigate this so that even though it's affecting everyone, it doesn't affect us as badly. And I think when you start getting more hamstring injuries and you have Havertz out, Saliba out, Gabriel out, Saka out, you have to ask those questions and you have to figure out solutions and you have to question training so that it doesn't happen next season, because football is not going to stop. They're still playing international football this summer for the Nations League or whatever the fuck it is. If like we had qualified for it or they had asked us to be in it, we could be in the Club World Cup, so the football is not going to stop. So if we just say it's a footballing problem and don't take any sort of action on ourselves, then we're just letting the elements fuck our season up without doing anything to defend ourselves. So to me, there's nothing wrong with asking that question. I really don't understand why people got their panties in a twist over that one. I do feel like they were nitpicking and they're just mad that there might be a chance that Arteta is, adding on to the problems when it comes to the hamstrings and the injuries, because they don't want him to be the reason. And I don't think you could ever make Arteta the sole reason why players are getting injured. But I think when we're asking questions about rotation and we know that our players have, we've spoken about it. City spread the minutes across their players way more than we do. We kind of run the same 13 players into the ground, and we've done that with quite a few of our core, so I don't know why that's such a bad question to ask, and why somehow asking whether or not Arteta is doing the right things in training is somehow like demonizing him or something. There's nothing wrong with asking the question. I didn't get that. I didn't understand why people were upset. Like Thierry Henry is 100% a true fan of Arsenal. Is he critical? Yes. And does he, how do we know that he doesn't know what he's talking about? From a coaching perspective, he hasn't been a great coach, but he said as a player, it usually means that it's a training thing. So why is his opinion no longer valid? As a fan, I don't get it, because he knows more than we do. He's been a coach and he's been a player. So why is his opinion not valid? I don't get it. It's just the strangest things. I didn't understand that. I understood the Sterling comment because that didn't make sense to me, but this made sense to me because all of us have asked these questions. All of us have asked these questions, there's nothing wrong with that. Let me read some of the comments. Westbank says Henry is correct in everything that he said. Billy says, I think the injuries can be questioned, but Pep also got injuries this season. Klopp also got injuries. So sometimes it is just luck. Boy says, we're screwed, man. We're more than half More than half the fan base have willingly put themselves into a psychosis for the manager, completely disconnected from reality, not allowed to talk bad about. I'm not going to say that, but yeah. True Gunner says people attack TT are Arteta fans, not Arsenal fans. And I think it's okay to say, I don't necessarily agree with what Henri is saying. I think that's the biggest problem that we have in this fan base is that I think this also happens in most fan bases when your club is not doing well. But we have a very difficult time having conversations because there's never an acceptance of somebody else's opinion because we all think we're right, and even I do it too. Like sometimes I'm thinking I'm right too. But the reality is that he is entitled to his opinion, and saying that this is a sign of mental illness, which I have seen saying that it's a sign of mental illness and pulling up his coaching records and saying that I hope we win something not because you want to celebrate it but because it will wipe away his legacy, to me is just the furthest thing away from being a fan. I just do not understand why we cannot have opinions. And to me, the super far people on the positive scale and the super far people on the negative scale have a very difficult time listening to other opinions. They get yelly, shouty, and disrespectful, and it's not okay because none of us really know more than anyone else because we're all kind of guessing. And I think you're valid in the way that you feel, but I don't think it's right to sit there and say that somebody is mentally ill for questioning why we have so many injuries and saying, well, maybe it's a training thing. Because he didn't even say it was like Arteta is running these guys into the ground. He just said maybe it's something in training. And they're saying that he's mentally ill. Mentally ill. Like they actually are saying that Thierry Henry, pretty much between him and Arsene, are the reason why so many of us actually follow this club and why we were so successful and why we get to sit at this top table and why we're in the top 6 and why people care about this club. And you're talking about him like a dog. I don't get it. Yo-Yo says Henri isn't working at or for the football club. So unsurprisingly, all of his opinions can't be based off of fact. He's making assumptions like all of us fans. Exactly. And even people that feel like, because I do think that some people feel like their opinion means more. And then they start to say things like, well, you just don't understand football or you just don't get it. And I'm just like, I feel like we still probably know just less than Henri, and so I would take his opinion a little bit more seriously because I'm sorry, Arteta lover 1908 probably doesn't know more than Thierry. We all have opinions, but he's actually been in the game. You have never played a professional football game in your life, so where do you get off saying that he's mentally ill for his opinion? I don't get it. He is making assumptions, but he's using his real life experience to kind of compare it up against, and we don't have real life experience, so his opinion should matter just a little bit more. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but you should at least respect it. Sorry, dog's losing his fucking mind. um Marco says, I agree with that as well. I don't think Mikel is solely responsible for the injuries, but he can make some tweaks to reduce them, playing a double pivot, less tracking back from the wingers, etc., which I just feel like is a better way of like, if you just give a little, like people that are super behind Mikel Arteta, is this wrong? Like what Marco is saying, I don't think Mikel is solely responsible, but maybe he can make some tweaks. Does that mean that he's any less of a good manager if you're saying that maybe he can make some tweaks? It's like any sort of like a little bit of like a little bit of criticism like just enrages them so much, and I don't really understand. I get annoyed with people that I feel like are being overly like they're lying about things, like saying we haven't really improved or saying all of our players are shit or Mikel is a dumbass or those types of things. To me, that's what makes me upset because I think that that's one, it's not conducive to conversations and it's just rude. Like I don't think those things make sense. But any sort of like if you're critical and you say something like, I just feel like, and this is what we're going to get into, I feel like at this stage we should have gotten to a final or won something. The level of vitriol for that particular comment and the level of delusion that's come off the back of it to me is just like, I've never seen a fan base minimize trophies so badly. And I don't get it, and there's no way that like there's certain things in life that you cannot minimize. And winning silverware is one of those. You know, for a big club, it's kind of all that matters is the winning. Because the reason why we're a big club is because we won trophies. So in this period of time under Mikel, if we continue not to win, our status at a big club will get smaller. And so there's no way to minimize it, you know? And so we're going to talk about that in a second, but I have never seen anything like it. And it's sad. You know, I'm like, as fans, if you're saying that you don't think winning trophies in this period of time would have changed anything, I really don't know where you're coming from because surely we are one of the most patient fan bases for a big club. I don't really think there's any other top teams that would have kept Mikel during this trophy drought. I really don't think so. We as fans have made that possible by being so patient. We are very patient. So saying something like, well, I think they'd still want him out, even if he had won a couple of trophies, is completely disingenuous because they still talk about the trophy that he won 5 seasons ago and why that's a valid reason to keep him. So you really think a patient fan base is not going to really be like, you know, even more patient if he had won a couple more? I think that wanting to prove people wrong makes people think like say things that they don't believe because nobody in their right mind would say that trophies, small or big, especially this even the small ones, wouldn't make a difference during this period. Diallo says, I listened to the whole show. Let's be real, guys. Henry ain't fucking with Mikel. It's so obvious. He doesn't give Mikel any benefits of the doubt. Diallo, thank you so much for your super chat. He did say he's doing a great job, though. So, you know, I don't think that if he says he's doing a great job, but he kind of feels like at this time, because let's be honest at this stage, right? We are probably 2 years beyond the period of time where we felt like we were building and progressing and building small and all that kind of stuff. We are in win now mode. We are a big club in win now mode that had a disappointing season. There's really no way to like, you know, I don't know how you could say that this was a good season or an okay season. It was poor by the standards of a big club, unless we want to admit that we're not a big club. If we're a small club, then fair enough. This is a fine season for us, just challenging, you know, and making it to the semifinals of a Champions League. That's good for a small team. But if we're a big side, this is a disappointing season. Any season where you don't win anything is disappointing, right? And underwhelming. There's really nothing at this stage when you're talking about Arsenal where we should be having the same conversations or be running the same narratives that we did 2 years ago because we're no longer in that period of time. So saying that Henry doesn't fuck with Mikel because he wasn't super positive or blowing smoke up his ass doesn't make sense because most of us are very frustrated. So if you're a fan, what you're saying is probably going to come off a little bit negative because there's not a lot going on that's positive right now. We've had a poor season. Finishing second 3 years in a row for a big club with no trophies is not something to be sitting there saying, but we've made progress. We did that 2 seasons ago. And he also made those points 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Thierry Henry wasn't sitting up on, you know, channels or whatever saying that, you know, we should have won something by now or anything. It's now 3 years past that. And now he's saying that because that's the reality that we're in. So what do you think he should have said? What should have Thierry said instead that would make you guys feel better about whether he's a true fan or not or whatever? Because I think Henry is mimicking a lot of the frustration that a lot of us do feel. But the tender point is that when somebody that really loves the club, that's really respected, says something that's not innately positive, it throws a lot of like, it takes the wool off of people's eyes and make people actually believe that it's true. You know, you can rubbish Neville and Carragher as much as you want, but a true Arsenal fan, a legend of the club saying the same things that Neville and Carragher is saying makes that opinion a lot stronger. And so what my question is how is Thierry supposed to react to a disappointing season outside of like criticizing the disappointing season, ask questions why we are where we are? That's my question. What do you guys expect him to say? Why do you guys expect everybody to sit up and act like not winning trophies for multiple seasons for a big club is okay? I'm really need somebody to answer that to me. Answer that for me, because he also said Mikel is doing a great job, and a lot of people that were saying that he was, saying bad things about Thierry, and also people that were saying Thierry is great, all missed that point that he said that Arteta was doing a great job. So what's the point? I don't get it. Millen says this is a real banter era. Ben Ross says Henri would have won a trophy with Arsenal if he was hired when Mikel was by now. I don't necessarily believe that. I don't really care. I don't necessarily want Thierry as a manager. I just think he deserves respect for his opinion. One, because he understands what it's like to at least play at a really high level and win things. And two, he's a true Arsenal fan at his heart. And he's only asking the questions that a lot of us are asking, but he's being villainized for it, because when you're sitting up on those chairs next to Gary Neville and Carragher, you're meant to pretend like everything is fine, which I don't understand why he's meant to do that. Josh says, lies. Henri has given Mikel team credit on multiple occasions on Sky and CBS. Stop this nonsense PR exercise. Yo-Yo says, people want Arteta to be faultless and above reproach. Samuel says, I agree with Henri. That's why he got a statue outside. Anike says, context to why we haven't won anything. Klopp was also slandered for not valuing the FA Cups and Carabao Cups, but rational fans understood he was trying to maximize his squad and compete with City. I think the biggest difference between us and Liverpool is that they were actually getting to finals and they were actually pushing City to 100 points or 99 points. That's another thing that Thierry Henry said. He didn't just say winning, he said actually getting to a final. So he is taking into account that he didn't say he has to be winning Premier League or Champions League. He didn't even say he has to be winning something. He said at least get to a final. Klopp had been to finals. So I kind of understand, but if we're really honest with ourselves, we haven't really pushed City to the limits. We're not, Liverpool can look at themselves in that period and say, we pretty much did everything that we could to compete with City and win. And we just went up against the best City side that we've ever seen. They went up against the Centurions. We never had to go up against Centurions, They never even had to break 90 points to beat us in a title race. And this season, we were way off it. So it's not really comparable, because Liverpool also went out in those windows and made sure that they had a team that could go toe-to-toe with City. We still haven't done that. So it's not really the same. And when we're saying that we shouldn't even expect to get to finals because the context is all that matters, I think we've really minimized it to as far as we can go to try to make an excuse. We have the context, but the context still doesn't account for not even getting to a single final. It doesn't. The context will make it okay, I understand why you didn't win Champions League, why you didn't win the Premier League, and maybe why that one season, you didn't have enough depth to do the Premier League and also do the win an FA Cup. But after 3 years of having a team definitely good enough to win something, there's no context that makes it make sense that we haven't made it to a single final. The context has been there, O'Malley says, when Newcastle and Palace win a title, not getting to a final this season is not good enough. Kamal says, no finals in 5 years is genuinely shambolic. Josh said, Klopp made the club believe because they were constantly improving and reaching finals, and heartbreak gave them experience to go achieve what they did in later seasons. Jess, who had a better season, by the way, Arsenal or Tottenham? I mean, it really depends on how you think about things. I think this is definitely a nuanced conversation. But I would say in terms of what both teams expected and what both teams got out of it, I would say Tottenham probably feel definitely better about their season than we did. Would I trade places with them? No, because winning a Europa League and being in 15th or 16th or whatever isn't making us closer to where we want to be. But would I have maybe wanted Newcastle season? Maybe, because they made sure that they had Champions League and they also won a trophy. I feel like I'd trade places with them for sure, because we didn't really challenge this season. We finished second, but we were much closer to the top 4 scrap than we were to actually Liverpool drop points in their last 4 games and still finish 10 points ahead of us. So yeah, I probably would have taken that Carabao Cup and a 4th place finish over what the fuck we got. 80 says the history books will be on their side. That's the issue. I agree with some of TT's opinion, but I don't think he should have went on their platform. Why? That's his job. Why? Like, what's the problem with him going on that particular program? This is his job. I don't really understand. I really am. I'm taken aback by the amount of people that are so upset by what he said. The next episode says, I'm noticing this manager for 5 years now, and the type of players he wants in the team tell me he's not an elite level manager. Inner Circle says, Klopp, 3 CL finals, 18, 19, 22, EFL and FA Cup double, with Premier League title second, 97, no comparison. And this is kind of what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have the context that you guys are trying to apply has been applied so much that Thierry even said getting to even a final. I feel like the context does not account for not getting to a single final. And I think that's where the conversation around, Arteta gets more and more pressurized, because how could you have not even gotten to a final yet? Not one. Because you don't have to be the best team to win a cup. You have to be the best team to win a Premier League, which is why I feel like I'm less like bullish about that, because I'm looking at City and I just don't feel like there's much we really can do to be better than them. They have the best manager in the world, and then they also have unlimited funds, and they have a team that at their core is still much better than ours, in my opinion. We can go toe to toe, and I'd love for us to get as close as possible, but they don't win all 4 trophies every season. We still have a chance to nick the Carabao, nick the FA Cup, or even get a Champions League, or at least get to a final of a Champions League, and we're still not doing that. So I don't feel like there's anything wrong with questioning Mikel and his ability to at least get us into as close to winning as possible. So yeah, Kamal says, seems like you do that for Arteta though. Don't know what that means. Yo-Yo says, relegated teams have won domestic cups, no excuses. Let's see. Laughing Man says, come on, 90 minutes from a CL final with both our strikers out. Yeah, but it's still not a final, is it? 90 minutes from a CL final is not like getting to it, is it? So, and what does that mean? 90 minutes from a CL final with both of what does it mean? I think a lot of people are using the injuries that we had this season as a crutch, but the injuries that we have did not impact us in the winter when we were trying to beat Manchester United at home to get to the next round of the FA Cup, or to get to a final in the Carabao Cup against Newcastle. So saying that the 90 minutes away from a CL final, what does that have to do with the fact that we haven't been to a final in any competition for 5 seasons? It doesn't mean anything. It means absolutely nothing. Millen says, you are sucking up Arteta Moyes mentee. I think you're talking to somebody else, because that's definitely not what I'm saying. Space Time says, on Reset it best himself, I'm not manager in, manager out, I'm Arsenal in. You all just want to attach your own labels to the club legend, who's a real fan. Have we all forgotten about Daniel Ek, Henri, and co? So none of his opinions are valid, because he was a part of the ownership kind of group that wanted to take over the club. I think people want any reason for Thierry's thing not to be valid, because they know if a club legend says it, it makes it more real, and they can't stand any sort of criticism on the manager. And I just think that is just so dangerous for where we're going, because we're 5 years past not even getting to a final. I could see us going 5, because there's also, stuff coming out of the club from the talking heads that Arteta's not under any pressure. And a part of that is because the fans are so patient, which was my point earlier. The fans are incredibly patient. Arteta would have way less detractors, because he doesn't have that many right now, but he would have way less detractors if he had won even a couple of cups. This is a very forgiving fan base, and that's fine. But at a certain stage, it is okay to ask questions, and we're there now. So don't be mad when somebody asks questions. It's just strange. Diallo, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, TT ain't just a fan. People listen to him for proper football analysis on and off the field. If y'all think TT is objective on evaluating Mikel, nothing he said was outside of the Sterling thing. I feel like he didn't say anything outlandish. I think this is totally overblown. I think people are having a very hard time hearing people say that we should have won something by now or questioning the manager. And it's boiling their heads because they're so focused on the outers being right that they care more about that than the club. And that's something for me that needs to be like kiboshed. I do not think that a lot of the people that are like very, very Arteta in are actually concerned about anything other than making sure that they prove Lee Gunner and them wrong. And I think it's the opposite. I think those people, the really toxic negative people as well, they don't want to give an inch because they don't want the positives to be right. And so they're fighting each other and not coming to a healthy middle. And it's so bad that even criticizing the fact that we haven't gotten to a final, it bruises their ego. And that's the problem. The egos are just way too big in this fan base. There are too many people that want to be right. The outers want to prove the inners wrong, and the inners want to prove the outers wrong. If you criticize anything, you're an outer and you're toxic. If you say anything positive, then you're an Arteta sexual. And we should all just want what's best for the club. And at this stage, 5 years in, you really shouldn't be like accosted and put on trial for asking why we haven't gotten to a final in 5 seasons. I'm so sorry, but like both sides need to calm the fuck down because it just doesn't make any sense. I do not understand why this is such a big problem. I don't get it. Every time somebody says, well, you're just an outer, you're just an outer, I'm just like, you guys have lost the plot. You're so concerned about being right that you don't want what's best for the club. And that's just ridiculous. Says, by the way, if the toxic positive fans believe we are so good, don't they think we should have been at least in a final by their logic? I mean, I was basically asking somebody that like something similar too, like, if you feel like we're too good, because, people are saying, well, it wouldn't have mattered if we won any trophies, any domestic cups, because people would still want Mikel out. People would still want Mikel out if we had won a domestic cup. So really, it's irrelevant whether we won anything or not in these last 5 years. We need to win a Premier League or a Champions League. And I'm like, if your standards are so high that you think winning an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup would be irrelevant, then why are you not criticizing the manager for not winning anything? If FA Cups and Carabao Cups are too good for you, then why are you not more critical about us winning an FA, like a Champions League or a Premier League? I don't get it. It's like these false high standards are like very veil thin. You don't have high standards. You just want a reason why it's okay for Mikel not to get to finals and not to get us close to touching silverware. I just don't get it. It's so strange. Ben says, where is anyone getting the idea that this guy is going to win us majors in 5 years when he literally is learning on the job? Valeria says, being balanced nowadays is not fashionable. Club over everything. Ultimately, we are all Arsenal in. Boy says, Highbury was just a dream. Fan base is finished. I just feel like most of our answers and conversations actually exist in the gray area in between, because we are a club that's come from pretty much the doldrums. We have a rich history, but Mikel brought us from the doldrums into a position where we're challenging. And now we're having like this internal battle about whether or not we're still building or whether we're supposed to be winning. And it's kind of weird right now. And so I still feel like the answers usually do fall somewhere in the middle, that of course there's context around why we haven't won the Premier League or a Champions League and why we haven't won trophies, but the context only goes so far. And my biggest concern, and the reason why I don't really care about, whether or not people still want Mikel out if he had won a couple of trophies, or what the rivals would say or whatever, is because my main reasoning for wanting us to take the domestic cups just a wee bit more serious, is because I do feel like it's really difficult to win the Champions League or a Premier League, especially when you never won anything before and you have such a green manager. So if we took the domestic cups just a wee bit more serious and we actually got into a final, got into a couple finals, won a couple, whatever, it's not so much about taking the pressure off of Mikel, but it's taking the pressure off of the players and getting them into a position where they're gaining confidence, because you don't gain confidence for missing out on your targets every season. I mean, Arteta is saying that it's going to give us more confidence and that he's getting goosebumps, but the reality is you only get confidence when you accomplish things and you're like, okay, now I can accomplish bigger things. That's how life goes. You have small wins, and those small wins big like become a big win. If you keep failing and you don't get anything in the meantime, you're just going to keep failing, or it's going to make it more difficult for you to meet your target. And so my main focus is not about proving Mikel right or proving the outers wrong or anything like that, because I don't really care about the online narratives as much as I care about these players that have never really won anything and don't have a lot of, experience in getting it over the line, getting those small wins and building them up and getting that experience in finals, so that when they do get to the latter stages of the Premier League and the pressure is on, they know that they've seen themselves win something before and they can grab onto that and use it as experience and confidence builder. Or when they're in a Champions League final, they know that they've been in a final together, so they know what it takes, even at a smaller scale. But I think we're asking a lot of a novice manager and a team full of players that haven't really won anything to go up against City and Liverpool with world-class managers and expect them to beat them to a Premier League. I think we're asking a little bit too much without them taking those initial steps. So people are being incredibly selfish, and it's all about themselves and their egos and proving people wrong. But there's nothing, there'd be nobody that would benefit more from a couple of domestic finals and trophies than those players. Nothing. And also from a fan's perspective, saying that I wouldn't care, speaking for me and saying that I wouldn't care whether we won a Carabao Cup or a FA Cup, you don't know me, so don't speak for me. I think if we went into next season knowing that we won an FA Cup and we struggled through the season, but we still won something, I would feel a lot more confident about what we're doing next season than winning nothing in 5 seasons. I have no confidence that we're going to win something now. None, because there's nothing to pull off of. There's no trophy that we've won. There's nothing. And so speaking for all the fans and saying, yeah, well, nobody would be happy with just an FA Cup. Speak for your fucking self. And I don't even believe you, because you guys still talk about the FA Cup that Arteta won 5 years ago and use that as like a, yeah, this is a reason why, of course, Arteta can do something. So stop lying. Of course it would make a difference. Would it change the expectation? No. The expectation is never going to change. Arsenal Football Club needs to be winning Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues. That's always going to be the expectation. But you can kind of use those little trophies as ways to build confidence and experience, and also take a little bit of pressure off. And for God's sake, have something to smile about at the end of the season at some point. Because people aren't smiling. People have the right to be like upset by this or like not satisfied by it, That's all I'm saying. It's just so strange to me. Bermuda Gunner said, thank you so much, says, you guys make no sense. PGMOL, poor cards, etc. Serious injuries to key players crippled our season. I'm giving him this year with good signings. What does this season and the cards and the injuries have to do with us beating Manchester United at home in the FA Cup? What do those injuries have to do with last season going outside in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup? These injuries are not, it's not just this season. Henry and most of us are saying that we should have won something or at least gotten to a final in these last 3 seasons. Using this one season as some sort of Trojan horse for your excuses doesn't make it's all the context has been used up. The context around this season is that it was probably going to be too hard for us to win a Premier League with this squad, with the red cards and stuff, but that doesn't have anything to do with the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup or the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup last season or the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup the season prior. It doesn't. So thank you so much for your super chat. I do appreciate it, but I really do think that like you guys are still missing the point and you're hyper focused on what your excuse was for this season, when really the question that Henry was asking is, or at least putting it out there, the criticism is that we haven't been to a final or won anything since Mikel has been here, except for his half season in the first season. That doesn't have anything to do with the injuries and red cards of this season. The context runs out at some point, and there's just no way to finesse it. There's no way to finesse it. I get that you want to finesse it, but there's no way to finesse it. And Ruax, you're saying all all FA Cup and Carabao does for me is save me from the banter, but it's not even about banter, and that's what I'm saying. It's not about online. It's not gonna stop Gary Neville from talking shit. It's not gonna stop the rivals from saying that we're ass. It's not gonna stop the outers from wanting Mikel out, but it's gonna be a good thing for the players. And that's all that matters. These players need experience, and people are so hyper focused on what's going on online. It doesn't matter, because it will always remain the same that Arsenal needs to be winning major trophies. So who cares about the expectation? The expectations will remain there. Even if Arteta wins the Premier League, the expectation is that he wins another. So I don't know why people are so hyper focused on the expectations and not focused on the benefits that a couple of domestic trophies could give us. And the fact that it makes absolutely no sense that we haven't gotten to a final. It does not make sense. There is no way that you can. There's just no way. I'm sorry. So yeah. Ivy says, I think we had our first team in the Carabao Cup against Newcastle and we still didn't win. We also had our first team against Manchester United, who are a much worse side than Newcastle, and we let them beat us at home. That's why I'm saying, like, the context does not blanket over some really poor showings in domestic cups over multiple seasons. And saying that it wouldn't help at all and lying to yourself that it wouldn't help anything when we know it would help the players and we know that there are a lot of fans that would care about that stuff is ridiculous. It wouldn't matter to me. It wouldn't matter to me. Come on. Ben Ross says, we are the perfect representation of our manager. I don't understand the outrage at Henri's comments, and I don't get the surprise that we're trophyless in 5 years with a novice manager and a cheap board. Man says, honestly, I don't think Henri said anything out of pocket. In fact, I think Arteta would agree with Henri, to be real. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I don't think Arteta is completely deluded. Blade says, our fan base cares so much about what rival fans will say about us winning the Carabao Cup. Who cares what other will say about us? Pep even said he won a Community Shield. Kamal says, one of my best memories was winning the FA Cup against Hull. Surrounded by my friends, watching us lift a trophy is important. It builds memories, not a second place finish. Valeria says, if we don't start winning now, our players will leave to win elsewhere, which sets us backwards, and it's going to be difficult. Diallo, thank you so much for your super chat. I see another one in there. I'm going to make sure I read it. Diallo says, I blame Arteta for getting comprehensively outcoached by Howe, but in the cups against United and PSG, I can't in good conscience blame him. Balance. Fair enough. You can't fair enough. If you can't blame him for, because again, we haven't gotten to a final in any year that Mikel has been here outside of the first one. So I know people are hyper focused on this one, but the point is that at some stage across these, maybe even last 3 seasons, he should have done something. And I really think that this season is giving him an out because people are utilizing the injuries, but people's favorite striker, Havertz, was out there in both the Newcastle game and the Man United game and missed all those chances. And guess who wanted that striker? Guess who wanted that player? It's Mikel. So it's really hard for me to look away from Mikel and some of this because I don't think the context is really covering any of that stuff. So yeah. O'Malley says, look how winning the Community Shield gave the players confidence to win against City in 23-24. Anyone that says winning titles doesn't matter doesn't understand the sport, which I don't want to say that I feel like they don't understand the sport because I feel like that's a little rough, but I will say that I just feel like it's a little bit disingenuous. And I think, again, if you're just saying that it's not his fault that, we didn't beat Newcastle this season, we didn't beat Manchester United, what are your excuses for every single trophy that we had an opportunity to win over the last 4 seasons and why we didn't win them? Is not a single one of them on him? I really think you guys are being very disingenuous. Like, if you're just talking about this season, Henri said in the last 3 seasons, and nobody is giving good reasons why in the last 3 seasons, which I do feel like it's because people know that it doesn't make sense. So hyper focusing on the fact that, oh, well, it's not his fault that Havertz couldn't put the ball in the back of the net against Newcastle or Man United. Well, it kind of is because he wanted that player. So I don't know what to tell you. Diallo says Arteta coached a 4-0 against United. Players shit the bed. Players that he bought. These are his players. I don't know what to tell you. Brian says either all of the 4 trophies matter or nothing matters. We can't context anything we want, but we can't change what the records say. As Arsenal fans, we should want to win everything. I don't know how Havertz is the only one getting lashings for the FA Cup when Odegaard quite literally could have won it for us in regular time. He's AWOL during the biggest games this season, but that's fine. I mean, I'll take your guys' thing for that too. It's like if you're gonna say, well, this is on Odegaard. Who chooses Odegaard? Odegaard is his player. It's his captain. A lot of you guys have killed Odegaard all season. This is Arteta has multiple opportunities to bring in creative midfielders. If he doesn't think he's good enough or he's not good enough, why doesn't he replace him? So again, to me, it all still goes back to him. And as much as you guys are trying to blame it on the players, you still can't give me a solid reason why it makes sense that in not a single season after the first one, he hasn't made a single final. Forget United and Newcastle. You guys have made your excuses for that and blamed it on Havertz and Odegaard. Fair enough. Why couldn't he get past Nottingham Forest in 2022? A championship side. Why couldn't he beat West Ham when we lost 3-1? Why couldn't he do that? You guys are not, you don't have like the amount of context that you can blanket over 4 years of trophylessness and finalistless, so you don't have it. I can tell you right now, you don't have it. You don't. Boy says fan base going to break this season. Arsenal perspective says, why couldn't we get to the Europa League final and win it? They don't have it. They quite literally do not have the context to blanket over 5 seasons of no finals. You have 4 opportunities, except for one season, because we didn't have any sort of, I think one of those seasons we didn't have any Europe, right? So he's had almost 4 opportunities to at least get to, I'm not saying even win, I'm saying get to a final. And you guys are, yeah, but he coached a 4-0 against Newcastle. What the fuck does that have to do with not making a single final? It doesn't mean anything. It's not justifiable. It's just not. Brian says either all of the 4 trophies matter or nothing does. We can context. Okay, I think you put that one in and I read that. But again, I understand that Arsenal fans are the kings of context, but even somebody that always tries to apply context to everything and has been, I feel like, very, very patient with a manager that I didn't really want from the beginning, and I've had major questions about the whole time. I just don't feel like I can apply any context to no finals in 5 seasons. I don't. Because even if you say that, oh, well, the players didn't get it over the line, this is his team that he built. He made choices to bring in these players. So if it was Odegaard's fault, that's his captain and his player. If it was Havertz's fault, that's his player, that's his guy, that's his top earner that he told them to bring in. So I don't have any sympathy for these arguments because they actually don't make any sense. Not over a 5-year period. They do for a 1-year period, but not a 5-year period. It just doesn't. Sorry. It just doesn't make sense. Rock says Arteta gives out contracts, right? Arteta doesn't have zero. He doesn't get, there's no signings or people that stay or contracts that get given out that do not get signed off by Mikel Arteta. So that is what David Ornstein has said, that he has a major say in all signings. So this idea that he has a team that he didn't build, that he didn't have any hand in any of the seasons that we went trophyless, that he's not at fault for any of it and we shouldn't question it, is just bullshit. It's just bullshit. Come on now. Arsenal perspective says, real talk, our 5-1 against Man City and our 5-1 against Real Madrid have stood for nothing when we don't get a trophy at the end of the competition or campaign. Blaze says, people killing me when I said Arteta sexuals. I just think people are being disingenuous. O'Malley says, not to mention we barely score in semis. If it was just one season, maybe even two, you could say, but it's been 5. So at some stage, the context just doesn't wash away the fact that it we should have made a final or won something by now. Sorry. Fuck's sake, guys, man. You want a Carabao Cup and an FA Cup for the they've been in 5 finals in the last 5 seasons. We've been in none. So you don't actually have to be the best team to win anything. So this idea that Arteta needs his perfect team to get to one final is just stupid. Doesn't make sense. Laughing Man says, I remember getting bashed by Pool City Bayern. Now we can compete with the big boys and beat Madrid this season despite crazy injuries. 2 new ballers and we're unstoppable next season. Redemption says, I wish we would not give Arteta any say. Please, Berta, save us. Boy says, this is crazy. Arteta has gotten what he wanted. Blaze says, didn't Arteta wanted to give new contract to Party? Yes. Valeria says, I don't think if he wins the Carabao or the FA Cup, it will satisfy the fan base because we have waited so long and it's his fault. And he has, but that's Valeria. It's not about it satisfying the fan base. The expectations are what they are, no matter what. It's not always just about quieting the toxic negatives, because again, there's a lot of people in this fan base right now that are justifying listen to what you guys are saying. There are a lot of people in this particular chat right now. There's 1,100 people watching. There are a lot of people in this chat that are right now justifying no finals in 5 seasons. No finals in 5 seasons. They are satisfied and or okay and or indifferent or using context to justify no trophies or finals in 5 seasons. The expectations are not going to change at all. But to make it seem like they would be in an uproar if we won an FA Cup when they're already justifying nothing makes no sense. It doesn't make sense. It's not going to change the fact that there's always going to be a small section of this fan base that want Mikel out no matter what. There is a certain section of this fan base that just do not like the manager, and that's just what it is. But the majority of fans are okay and or fine with what we've done so far. So why would you think that they'd be in some sort of uproar if we won something? Why don't we ever think about how the players will think? How the players would benefit from a trophy? Why is it always, yeah, but the fans are not going to stop? Of course they're not, because the expectation, no matter what you do, is to win a Premier League or a Champions League. So if the expectations remain the same, the reasoning for wanting an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup is not about changing the expectation. It's about what you're going to gain by getting closer to what you want to do. I don't know how much easier I can make it for you guys, but it's not always about what the toxic negatives are going to say and proving them wrong and the fact that they're always going to want Arteta out. If you already know that they're always going to want them out, if you always know that the expectation is a Premier League or a Champions League, then why would it hurt to win a Carabao Cup or an FA Cup? Why is it's not going to mean anything? Of course, it won't change the expectation, but it definitely will help. It 100% will help. There's no way that no trophies and 1 or 2 trophies are the same. There's no way. And the benefit for the players is more important than what the toxic negatives are going to say. Stop, get offline, and think about the benefits that it will have for the players. Because what we're asking them to do is very difficult. Win a Premier League or a Champions League against teams with all the experience and have world-class managers, and we don't have those things. So just at least winning something will give them something to pull off of. And that's my point. People are too busy worried about what the toxic negatives are going to say. Sorry. You guys are so confused and are complaining to arguments. You are acting like any of the super chats have said Mikel don't deserve blame, just disingenuous. I'm not talking about your super chats. I'm talking about in the chat, people are justifying no trophies in 5 seasons and no finals. They're saying the context, he coached a 4-0, he did this, he did that. And if you guys don't feel that way, then how about actually say that in the chat? If you guys feel like he deserves some criticism, then say it. But when you sit there, and many of the chats have said it, is that, yeah, but he coached a 4-0. Yeah, but he doesn't have the players. Oh, but it's Havertz. Oh, but it's Odegaard. You are, by omission of saying anything that could be possibly his fault, that he's faultless. So be more specific, or I read your comment as it says, and I'm thinking, oh, well, they think it's okay. They're justifying it. There are plenty of people in this comment section that are not saying that it makes at least a little, it's at least sus that we haven't gotten to a single final. You haven't even said that it's not sus. It's sus. It is sus. Like, it does not make sense. So I'm reading the comments out as they are, but you guys are pretending like I'm not reading your comments as they are. The comments are saying it's fine. The context, Newcastle was a 4-0 that Havertz didn't score and Odegaard didn't score, and United, Odegaard fault, blah, blah, blah. But you're still not giving me concrete reasons why it's okay over a 5-year period not to win anything. O'Malley says, very sus. Laundry says, I feel like this is one of those secret CIA experiments based on human conditioning and what is the limit of the human psyche. I agree, because I genuinely do feel like there are a lot of people that are not really fighting really about Arsenal. They're fighting about being right or wrong. I really don't feel like a lot of this has anything really to do with Arsenal. It has to do with online and being right against the total other direction. If you guys guys have been paying attention, and like, I'm American, so politics in America are crazy, but a lot of what goes on in our fan base does mimic what's going on in America in politics. And I don't feel like it's that different. I don't feel like people are actually caring about the actual problems and the fact that each side is a little bit right and a little bit wrong. Everybody thinks they're 100% right and the other side is 100% wrong. And when you think that way, you can't get to the happy medium, which is probably more of the truth than anything. And I see just so many similarities between that and the Arsenal fan base and where we are with Mikel. And it's not that Arteta is 100% wrong, or, Arteta didn't coach well in some of those games, but at a certain stage, you have to ask the question why we haven't gone to a single final. And it's not acceptable for a big club to not win anything in 5 seasons. So then we should dive a little bit deeper, but we can't dive a little bit deeper if people are acting like it's okay, because it's just not. Yuri says, full control. Richard Stamp says, this is ridiculous. Valeria says, your reasoning will work if we had won a few FA Cups or Carabao Cups along the way. We did not wait 5 years to win a Carabao Cup, just in my opinion. He just has to win a major trophy, and that's Mikel's fault. I didn't say we waited 5 years to win a Carabao Cup. I just think this whole way of thinking of, well, it doesn't mean it like, not like that is the exact same. If we were challenging and had a Carabao Cup or an FA Cup in tow, that'd be the exact same. It wouldn't be, because at the very least, the players would have something, and then they know that they're winners and that they're not nearly men or losers. I just feel like it's just so weird to say that no trophies is exact same as a couple of trophies. Like, it's just not the same. But fair enough. It's just so I didn't come all this way to win a Carabao Cup. Well, your manager hasn't won anything. So isn't that worse? If you haven't come here to win a Carabao Cup, then him not winning anything should be worse, because that's worse. But people are acting like winning a Carabao Cup and an FA Cup is the exact same thing as winning nothing, and it's just not. But fair enough. The one thing I will say, though, is that saying that Thierry is somehow mentally ill, or, you want, hold on, saying he's mentally ill or whatever is wrong. So, that's just weird. Or saying that, you want his legacy wiped away. I just don't understand what Mikel has done to this fan base that makes him think that Thierry deserves to be flogged for saying that he thinks we should have won something in the last 3 seasons. This is just not big club mentality, and that's not even me being high standards. It's just not. Space and Time said, who Henri says mentally ill. I think the account on Twitter is called Arteta's Revenge. And it's a pretty big account on here. And people are co-signing it, and it's just wild. Tap fan base, Kamal says, why do people ignore the fact that Arteta said out of his own mouth that he wants a small squad plus use of injuries an excuse for this season? It's only an excuse for this season, though. I would say for sure that we've been pretty lucky with injuries in comparison to other teams over the last 2 seasons, and only this season it hit us badly. So, using the injury excuse doesn't really account for anything else. But, I do remember Arteta saying that he prefers a small squad, and now he's kind of changed his tune on that. And maybe he's learned that he can't have a small squad because he is running the same 13 players into the ground. So maybe that's something he's changed over the last couple of years. YouTube user says, you're speaking facts, just folks act like a trophy is not the goal. I mean, I've never seen a fan base win so little but be so arrogant about trophies. Mohammed says, guys, we all know deep down Havertz will play 70 to 80 games, even with the new striker signing. Hold on, I have to text this person back because it's important. Okay. But anyways, let's all get back on the same page. I love you guys. We argue and we don't agree, but the reality is I do respect your guys' opinions. And if you feel like I don't agree with some of it, and I think it's a little weird, but at the end of the day, we will know the results at some stage. He will get his attackers. We will be 6 years in, and if he doesn't win anything this season, we will come back to this place and I'll ask you guys again, does it make sense that he hasn't won anything in 6 seasons? So because we could have that conversation. I hope we don't. I actually hope, that if we don't win the Premier League or the Champions League, that we do win a Carabao Cup or FA Cup. So I can ask you guys if it felt different or if you cared, because I do think you guys will feel different, or at least less pressure, or at least a little bit more confident about what we're doing if we actually do win something. And I think it'll help the players. So we will come back, but ultimately we have other things to talk about too. And, it is what it is. Space Time says if Gyökeres is signed, he will be relegated to Carabao Cup minutes because Teta rates Havertz more. And I don't think they complement each other. Let's see. Redemption says Sesko is young. He needs time. We know. Next excuse. Anike says people try to make things hinge on a single point of failure rather than looking at our board, not being ruthless enough to make decisions that are good for the short and long-term future of the club. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people feel like it's just the board, and if the board had done this and that, then we would have done better. The reality is that the board probably will not change. We've gotten a new sporting director. The people that have butts in seats are probably going to be there. And so, like I said about the women's team, is that they didn't have the best board. They didn't have the best transfer windows. They didn't have, I was complaining about some of the similar things that I complained about with the men's team, with the women's side. We had fallen behind. We weren't actually bringing in the type of talent that we should have. And it took a coaching change for us to win a Champions League. And so sometimes football is not about, it's like, we know that the board and stuff is not perfect. And a lot of clubs don't have perfect boards. Napoli's board is not perfect. They got rid of Kvaratskhelia and let Osimhen go. They changed their manager and they won the league. So Sometimes the manager is the biggest factor when things are imperfect, and when you don't have the perfect board, you don't have the perfect scouting, you don't have the perfect team, you don't have this. And so at a certain stage, Arteta will be the lowest fruit on the tree. He will be the easiest fruit to grab off, So ultimately, the managers change the most because that's pretty much the only thing you can change, So I hear you guys, but we're just at a stage where he needs to win, and it would help him if he won something, because the question wouldn't be whether or not, you know, can he win a Champions League or a Premier League. Right now, the question is, can he win anything? And that's a darker question to be asking about Mikel than anything, because basically what we ask ourselves is, he Poch, So, and a lot of you guys, if I said, do you want to hire Poch, you'd say no. Right now, Mikel is Poch, So that's all I'm saying. The Arsenal fans are attacking Henry, such clickbait title. They are. It's not clickbait, and I'll show you, because it's always every day you're lying. But if you're saying that Mikel is mental, or not Mikel, but Henry is mentally ill, to me, that's an attack. Like, are you joking? And if you've seen the timeline, people are calling him everything under the book. So nice try, but they are. Because he said we should have won something in these last couple of seasons. Not even we should have won something, but got to a final. No, he's more out of control than our fan base. So, yeah. The way Henry lies about Arteta sometimes is scary. This looks and feels like mental illness. He bold-faced sat on in front of camera and claimed that Arteta insisted on Sterling instead of a striker. Jesus. That wasn't great. Let me see. Who's the other person that I saw that was totally out of control? And they said they wanted to wipe away his legacy. I was like, yeah, that's pretty dark. Guys, I get it that people don't want to take accountability or say that people do anything wrong, but that's pretty fucked up. I don't have time to look for it, but his name is like Gunners Videos or whatever. He makes comps. He said that he hopes to win a Champions League to wipe away his legacy. They are attacking Thierry Henry, so you can miss me with all that. Saying he has mental illness is crazy. Do you know when you say that somebody is mentally ill, do you know what you're actually saying? I get it that you guys love Mikel, like I get it, but it's not clickbait, and you guys need to just come on. Even if you don't agree with what they said, surely you would not think that it's okay for people to say that our biggest legend is mentally ill. Oof. Some of you guys are too deep in it. You're so far in it that you can't get yourself out, and it's scary. It really is. Thierry Henry, I mean, he's not faultless, but yeah, but anyways, let's see. I wanted to talk about Leroy Sane. He's been linked to the club as well. Personally, I don't necessarily feel like this is anything we need to be worried about, because they basically been linking us to him since they said in the report that he's doing contract talks. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were being used just to leverage, those contract talks. They're, I think, finding it a little bit difficult to find a agreement. So I wouldn't really worry too much about that. Now, if it starts to, gain traction, then we might be in trouble. But I do think that, it doesn't really make sense for him to come in unless he's the third attacker and we're getting him on a free and we're just trying to bolster the squad and he's going to be like a backup, because him as our main winger signing would be incredibly disappointing. Like incredibly disappointing. So I don't think we have to worry about that too much. And then the last thing is Let's see. People are already justifying a Sane signing as well. Like you can always tell people that love, the manager, they will justify fucking anything. Sane as our main winger signing is ridiculous. But James McNicholas said, and unfortunately this is coming from his paywall stuff, but it's already out here and I didn't put it out, so but he said, I'm not going to get deep to the Sesko-Gyökeres debate in this answer, but on Havertz, he's still seen as incredibly important to the team by Mikel and his staff. Here, I'll let you guys read it too, because I don't want to be called a liar that I'm making this shit up. Let's see. There. All right. Let's see. There. I'm not going to get deep into the Sesko-Gyökeres debate in this answer, but on Havertz, he is still seen as incredibly important to the team by Mikel Arteta and his staff. They really love the combination of physical, mental, and technical attributes he brings. My prediction, so this is a prediction from him. So remember, it is a prediction. My prediction is whoever Arsenal sign, Havertz will start the season as first choice number 9 and probably play a lot more games there than many expect. Which we've kind of been saying this on the channel, that I don't think this is the end of Havertz because Arteta sees him as a plus, not a minus. I think a lot of fans see him as a minus, but he definitely sees him as a plus, so unfortunately for people like me, Havertz is most likely going to play a lot of minutes, and I don't know. I guess I just don't see it. I probably will never see it. What's the big whoop about Havertz? And part of me feels so like, I just don't see it. It's a footballer whose main attributes don't have anything to do with what he does on the ball. As a striker, he has one of the worst shot conversions, or in the league, top 3 up there with Nico Jackson. He's not necessarily creative. I don't see him as more than a squad player, but they see him as an important part of this team. And that's just a reality that I guess I'm just going to have to come to grips with. Because even though this is just a prediction from James McNicholas, I don't think any of us look at this and think it's a joke or it's off base. We know Arteta loves Havertz. He was even saying that he was breaking all the physical metrics. And I guess I could understand more if he was lightning quick or super strong or something. But I think he's just kind of okay at everything. But maybe I just don't know ball and I cannot see what a majestic footballer this is. But buying Gyökeres and seeing him on the bench for this guy starting is my head's going to be on Pluto. But whatever, man. Gunner Blog is wrong. There's no way Havertz will start over Sesko or Gyökeres. Brap says we're trying to sign Gyökeres with this message. Jagoon says I've said it for the 100th time. Gyökeres or Sesko aren't coming to hold bench. That's obvious. I guess we're not signing a striker. Havertz couldn't start ahead of Omarodian. Just as we all know it's Sesko. Just get him and move on to buy other positions. I mean, it's not necessarily that Gyökeres would not be somebody that Arteta would also want to share time with Havertz, because we know that his preference is Sesko. So if he gets Gyökeres and that's not really the player that he wanted, I would actually think that would make it easier for Arteta to prefer Havertz too. So it could be the case that no matter who we get, there's a reason for Arteta not to start them over him. So Havertz bulking up might mean he plays less in midfield. Anika says blaming Havertz for this season's offensive struggles, but ignoring he was the only fit striker for 4 competitions, who literally collapsed on a pitch a week before. I don't think anybody blamed Havertz for the season offensive struggles in its entirety. I just think that he's just not good enough to be our number 9 and lead us to a Champions League or a Premier League. That's completely different than blaming him for all of our struggles. I never said that he was the only reason why we lost things. I never said that I didn't understand that he was tired and all of that. I just don't think he's good enough to lead the line for Arsenal Football Club in the Champions League and Premier League and us win major trophies. So the two don't have anything really to do with each other. Um, I think we need to lift the levels, and to me, he's average. He is average at pretty much everything, and his main qualities are not what he does on the ball. It's all about space invading and working hard off of the ball and running. And, it's that's just, to me, that's just not Arsenal Football Club. And we should aim for higher. We're going up against Salah and Holland, and we have Havertz. So I get it that people really want to defend Havertz. They like him. They bought into the fact that he could be the guy. For me, he's not, so it just is what it is. I still think it's a strange choice. I think most people outside of Arsenal think it's still strange that we are pretending he's good enough, but a lot of Arsenal fans do feel like he's the guy. We will see, because if he's starting games next season, and the other guy is not starting as much, at a certain stage, if he starts enough times at number 9, we will know. It won't be about him getting injured. It won't be about anything other than, is he good enough or not? Chris says Havertz is a final third link player who operates best in quick transition. Leverkusen, Chelsea under Tuchel. We play slow, controlled football. It doesn't make sense. Stuart says some reports saying Sesko would cost 90 million. That'd be insane. Boy says Havertz is just spicy. Iwobi is what manners say. But yeah, Josh says, what happened to Kai? I used to dream of signing him at Leverkusen. Not even words generated the type of hype Kai had in Germany. Sad what's happened since. He grew a couple of inches. I think going from 6'1" to 6'4", whatever, it just changed the whole dynamic of how he runs and how he kicks the ball and stuff. And, you see that he's just a lot more agile and quick in Germany. When you watch those comps back, he's just a lot slower here. And I just think that has quite a bit to do with it. And then the transition from the Bundesliga to the Premier League is a big one. And I just don't think he ever really mentally, truly got over what happened at Chelsea. He's just a shell of the player that he was at Leverkusen. And I don't know. Akmal says Sporting came out and said they won't sell Jokeris for less than 80 million. Yala says Havertz is utterly shit. Signing him is Mikel's biggest crime over the last 5 years. That alone deserves him the sacking. MM says Kroenke ain't cashing £265,000 for a man to sit on the bench, to be fair. Theo says he's Bettner with insane PR. And Boy says Havertz gets so much protection. I mean, just because somebody is not as bad as you thought he was going to be doesn't make him good. And I think, again, I say this all the time, but one of the biggest things about Arsenal fans, I feel like we're given things and we know right away that it's not good enough, or we have these we're in that instant reaction to signing somebody that failed at a rival, and then we're going to put them on our biggest wages and spend a lot of money after we missed out on a title and we knew we needed to really go up a level. Our instant reaction was that he's not good enough. And then we were in the dark, and then our eyes adjusted to it. And now we're looking at it and we've adjusted to it so much that we're some people are thinking that it's good. And I just think not as bad as I thought it was going to be does not equal good. And he just isn't as bad as I thought he was going to be, but it's still not as good as I feel like we could be. Again, Holland, Salah, that's what we're going up against. Holland, Salah, Isak, it's just not the same. Especially, we don't have a winger that's going to put up Salah numbers. So we need a striker that's going to strike fear into the opposition, that's going to score when needed. Again, one of Kai Havertz's biggest things is not that he doesn't score goals, is that he doesn't score when we need him to. So mostly in big games against the Liverpools or the Cities or whatever, he misses big chances, or he's just nowhere near it or whatever. And so that needs to change. And, if you guys want to, hitch your wagon to the Kai Havertz train, that's fine. I'm just not on it. Again, didn't say he was the worst player in the world or that it's all his fault. But Havertz is just not the guy. So Mohammed says, Jess, we all know deep down Havertz will play majority of the games as a 9 or box crasher BS or goalkeeper who knows what Arteta's thinking. Bulgarian says, if Havertz hasn't won some of you over already, I don't think he ever will. He might not be the guy, but he's been a good signing. Performance proves it. He's just not been as bad as we thought he was going to be. And he's usable, that's for sure. But what we're actually discussing is he's not the guy, so we need to find the guy. It's just we're so beyond the trying to make Havertz work. We've made him work for 2 seasons. Like, we deserve more. Havertz gets so much protection, and yet almost all the chat is berating him. Where's the protection? Probably not inside this chat, but I don't think you can say that he doesn't get a lot of protection from Mikel. He's one of the only players that I've seen that Arteta actively asks for the fans to support him and, give him love and care. He's said in his press conferences that he needs care and love and all this kind of stuff. There are a lot of fans that have basically said that, like, he's been one of our best players, one of our most important players. He does get a lot of protection. So this chat may not agree with it, but he does get a lot of protection. Yoga says, I'm telling you that Kai or Sesko as the 9 with Rice, Marino, dual winning and box crashing means that the left forward will have to be a genius, ruthless playmaker. Brap says, care and love on 265,000 pounds a week. Is he a baby? And I do kind of agree with Bulgarian in the point that if he hasn't won you over, he probably won't win you over. And I think that's okay. I just don't think Kai Havertz is the type of player that is ever going to get full support, because he's just somebody that, or fully people are going to think that he's the guy for us, because there's just no way that you've seen him in his entirety and you don't feel like you still need another midfielder, you still need a number 9. Just that in itself lets you know that, it's probably okay not to be fully behind the signing. You're not the guy, but you're our highest earner. Make that make sense. Octavio says, this points to another thing that Arteta needs to work on, which is his man management, particularly his lack of rotation of players and slowly wearing down the same 13, 16 players for 50 games. Let's see. Josh says, if you want to see Kai protection, go watch AFTV. Top earner has to do the most, and he doesn't nearly do the most. I mean, it's funny because you have high expectations of Rice because he's our biggest signing ever. You have high expectations of Odegaard because he's our captain, but you don't have any expectations of our highest earner. Those 3 players should have the most pressure on them. And, they do. Odegaard got killed this season because he wasn't good enough, but him not being good enough this season doesn't mean that Havertz is good. And using another player to prop up a shit player doesn't work here. Odegaard, poor season. That doesn't mean that Martinelli had a good season. Odegaard, poor season, doesn't mean Havertz is good enough. I see that that's being used a lot as, but Odegaard is not the reason why Havertz is not good enough to be our number 9. He's just not. I don't know what to tell you. I don't get it. Those are 2 completely separate things. They don't have anything to do with each other. Carlos Clark says, if Arteta doesn't get Gyökeres, he should be sacked, and eventually these players will stop playing for him. Westbank says, that's why Chelsea was glad to get rid of him, and the fans were happy too. Sometimes it just is, it's not the best thing that you could have done. Sometimes buying a player just, we've made it work, but it hasn't been a A++ signing. It really hasn't been, and it just hasn't been. Westbank says, that's why, I read that. Yo-Yo says, Killakai. I like Killakai, but his signing was a fatal mistake. He's the German Fellaini. And a lot of people do like Kai. I don't think a lot of people really like Kai, the person, and they've grown to like him. And, he's had some big goals for the club and stuff like that. But none of that really means anything when we're talking about whether or not he's the guy to lead us to trophies. And that's the conversation that we're having. Valeria says, what do we expect to win if Havertz starts next season? And we know how crucial the number 9 spot is, crucial to the system. If he does that, he's asking to be sacked. I think what you can expect is he will score goals, but he'll miss the big chances when we need him to score. And those goals will end up costing us, So I it's just I can't like I can understand players that are um I can understand players that are a little bit more I can understand the conversation a little bit more about like an Odegaard type of player where, he's had good seasons, but he's had a poor season. And, is he I can understand the conversations more about Odegaard, and I can understand the differences of opinion on him. But I genuinely don't understand what the conversation is about Kai. I really don't, because he's never been good enough. It's not like we have a player that was performing really high for us and dropped off like badly. That to me is a different conversation than people trying to convince people that Kai is something that he's not when he just isn't good enough. And he never has been. So, I don't really get it. Brian says, I don't really have an issue with Kai. It's his wages. And exactly, like if he was on 100,000 pounds a week, then you could afford to put him on the bench. But the wages that he's on means that he cannot be on the bench. He needs to be a big part of the squad. And he's our highest earner. And that inevitably will keep you from bringing in big players because unfortunately, you can't just have unlimited wages. So, there's just not really a big conversation about Havertz outside of he's just not good enough. And we still have to buy players in his position, in the positions that he plays, because he's not good enough for either one of them to start. And Arteta continuously starting him will leave us without trophies because he's not good enough to lead us into Premier League and Champions League. Yo-Yo says Fellaini was unstoppable at times, so the comparison isn't exact, but Arteta uses him in a similar fashion as Moyes did. Others have drawn the similarities. But I can see why people will be disappointed with this because I think the idea was we're going to buy a really good striker and Havertz would go to the bench but you could probably sense that we'll start next season with Havertz starting no matter who it is. And that's unfortunate. Could we, though, 65 million down the drain because of this guy? This was really a hot, expensive mess. Boy says the Saudis aren't stupid. They ain't buying Havertz. Troy says highest earner and not doing much but top goal scorer. Make it make sense. Because here's my the perfect example of the Havertz conversation is people will look at his goal scoring and say, well, he scored 9 goals and he's our top goal scorer. And I'm like, but does that mean he was good or does that mean that everybody else was bad? Because 9 goals in the Premier League, you could say that he would have scored double, but you can't even guarantee that because he's never scored more than 15 goals. So, it's people are giving him credit for being average. And it's like, all right, cool. This is where my club is at. Fair enough, but Diallo says the utter damage that the Havertz signing has done to us is unspeakable. As Yo-Yo said, fatal blow to our last 2 seasons. But I know people that prop up Havertz, and so much so that their disdain for Odegaard and Martinelli is coming out of their pores because those are 2 players that are not performing well. And so it gives them a place to hide the Havertz. They're like, okay, well, if somebody else is not playing well, I can hide behind that and really bang on Martinelli and Odegaard to make it seem like Havertz is some great player. But Havertz has never had a season like Odegaard or Martinelli has had at Arsenal, where Odegaard was one of the best players in the league and Martinelli was one of the best attackers in the league. And Havertz has never been that good for us. So they have credit in the bank for a lot of people. Trying to bang on Odegaard and Martinelli to prop up Havertz, who's incredibly average, is just wrong to me. I'm so sorry, but and I'm not even a big Martinelli person, but I see people doing it all the time and it's really weird. Eros says, sad part is he's our top goal scorer and he's been injured half the season. Troy says, I want him replaced, Jess. I want to see him up top. Kai failed in midfield and has unimpressed up front. He was meant to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but has further complicated transfer plans. Charlie says Havertz is not the problem. The coach style of play is a problem. He has to stop LFBs converting to midfield. LFBs? Left fullbacks, inverting to midfield. I mean, I would say that is a problem, that the coaching style and the style is, like, too complicated, and like, our left fullback pinching in doesn't work as well as it used to, but that doesn't mean that Havertz is not a problem. We have multiple issues, and he is definitely one of them. Josh says our striker needs to be different. We need one who is hungry for goals, not link play or drifting out wide and stuff like that. Basically, I need us to get a more selfish striker. We just need better, like, no matter what you think about other players, it's not a, well, what aboutism doesn't work here. Whether you don't like Martinelli or you don't like Odegaard and you don't think that they've been good enough, or you don't think Mikel's system is good enough, what aboutism does not change the fact that Havertz is not good enough to lead the line or lead us to major trophies at Arsenal Football Club. So we don't need to, it's like there's just some things that are just like, how do we not all agree on this? It's just, what has he done to you to make you believe that he's good enough? Like, there's just no way. I know people that love Kai, but are honest about the fact that we still need a striker, but others are actively downing other players or using whataboutism to try to prop up somebody that has not had a glowing season at Arsenal, has not been somebody that, at the most, he surprised us that he hasn't been as bad as we thought, but it hasn't been more than that. Like, come on. But I also think it's connected to Mikel, because Mikel, it needs to work for Mikel. And if you like Mikel, you need this to work. You need Kai Havertz to work. So I think it also is connected to that. Most, like, devout Arteta defenders are also Havertz defenders. So Steve says, what are your thoughts on Gittins? Probably, like, down the list, like, good player but young, raw. Would prefer Nico Williams. But he's fast and he has, like, the elements, but he's, like, incredibly raw. And he's also from the Bundesliga, and I'm very scared of Bundesliga attackers. So because sometimes it works, and when it doesn't, it's, like, very scary. So I don't know. But yeah, Gittins is a good player. I prefer Nico Williams. My thoughts on Delap, good player. I think United are lucky that I think United are lucky that a player like Delap is available to them when they're not in a good place, because, obviously they were looking at Gyökeres, but I think Delap is actually better than Højlund and Xerxes. And I think, oddly, that he will elevate them, or at least give them a solid striker that they can rely upon, that can score lots of goals for them. So yeah, I think United are lucky that Delap is available to them outside of Europe. So yeah, he's a good player. Like, he's better than Højlund and he's better than Xerxes. Is he somebody that I would want at Arsenal? I would hope that we can shoot higher than that, but I think he's good. I think he'll end up being one of those, like, super solid Ollie Watkins type strikers. Foxy says Arteta is so stubborn that he'll do everything possible to make Havertz a success. And this is coming from somebody that's not an Arsenal person. Like, he is a Newcastle fan. Like, literally anybody can see this outside of people that are, like, devout Arteta defenders. Victor says we needed a midfielder like Zubi. I feel like he can change our game a lot. Like, a lot of big clubs wanted him. Getting Zubi first doesn't mean the forwards aren't the priority. No, I understand that. But I think for a lot of fans, like, the order is what they think is the priority. And also, when we probably could have gotten him, or, like, we thought we would have gotten him before, and we bought a lot of DMs, it's just not exciting. So, and we've also known that we were going to get him since, like, January. So I get why people are, like, maybe not as enthused about it, or maybe a little down on it. And then when you see rivals going after Wirtz and Shirky and Reinders, and I think most of us feel like we could use more creativity or attack-minded in midfield, then that's why the downing on Zubi happens. But ultimately, like, if he does well and he performs, all of that will go away. I feel very similarly to what happened with Raya. People wanted Raya to be bad so bad, but it didn't happen. He performed, and it's all pretty much gone away. So I feel similarly about Zubi too. Like, Zubi, will probably get some negativity at the beginning. I think he'll need some acclimation time, but once he settles in, and he'll be fine. Like, I don't have any problems with him. Octavio says, right-footed creative 8, Simmons, Reinders type, and change the dynamics of our attack completely, but Arteta's idea of ideal midfield trio doesn't include more than one creative player. And this is why I say, like, everything is very nuanced and nobody wants to listen because they're just so busy arguing. But Odegaard has had a poor season, and there are issues with Odegaard. He's not a perfect player, and I don't think he is. I think Arteta's style of only wanting, like you said, one creator hurts us, but I don't think just taking one person out and bringing in one attack-minded creative player is really going to solve all of our problems. We need to add more creativity to Odegaard, and eventually, because I also think that like this Max Dowman and Ethan stuff is going to eventually mean that, they will replace Odegaard at some stage because they're both really good players, and Arsenal are gonna, Odegaard is like what, 26? So eventually he'll be phased out, right? But this idea that anybody would build a side with only one creator, no matter how good they are. Pep never just had KDB. He always had creativity sprinkled across the pitch, whether it was coming from his fullbacks, whether it's coming from the 8, whether it's coming from the wings, there was always multiple creative outlets. We have not as good of a player as KDB, and Arteta has one creator that's also doing the tempo controlling from deep because Partey can't do it. So multiple things can be true at the same time, just like Kai Havertz is not the main problem or the only problem, but that doesn't mean that he's not a problem because he's just not good enough overall. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't done good things or scored good goals or been maybe even better than we thought. Most things are nuanced and are very much so in the gray area, but people are so stuck on one side or the other that they just don't think. I would love for us to bring in another attack-minded midfielder, and I would actually love for us to just have somebody that we can play 2 more attack-minded or somebody that can play instead of Odegaard. I'd love for us to have 4 really good midfielders, Zubi, Declan Rice, Odegaard, and another attacking 8 or 10. I think that would suit us so much more. Zubi can take minutes off of Rice. Rice can take minutes off of Zubi. You could just do so many different things. But because Arteta only wants one, all of the creative stuff is on Odegaard. And he's not the type of player. He's more of an 8 now. And I think we play like that anyway because Arteta doesn't give him a free role. If he had a freer role, he'd be a little bit better. But it's just wild to me how Arteta lives like this. Like, I don't know how he lives like this. I really don't. With all the attack-minded players that are available that can play left center mid for us, Reinders, Simmons, Eze in particular. I don't know why you wouldn't bring one of those in and give yourself the opportunity to play with an Eze and an Odegaard and a Rice, or, an Eze, Ethan, and Zubi, or give your more ways of being more creative and adding more flair to the team, and also taking minutes off of Odegaard's legs because he looks on the edges of being shot. So I don't understand why we live this way. I don't know why we want to make it harder, on us, So yeah, read a couple more. Emma says, hi, Jess, I missed the beginning, but have you touched on how the team extending Sambi plus the return of Vieira might indicate we won't get another mid, which sucks? Did they confirm that they're going to bring back Fabio Vieira? I just think they're extending Sambi to get more money. Sambi's not going to come back to Arsenal, I don't think. So yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see anything about Fabio Vieira staying. Let's see. I think he's just gonna come back, but I think he'll get sold. So yeah. Sanuga says we're extending Sambi. I think just because he only had 1 year left, so they want to maintain his value. Blaze says Leipzig want 92 million for Sesko. Just do you think he's worth this price? No. Victor says the midfield issues are going under the radar. I'm still not comfortable with Rice as the 8 against low blocks and in tight spaces. We need more creativity. I agree. I think we both really agree on that I genuinely do not understand the way that we built the midfield and why he wants to have Rice like a big space runner in tight spaces on the left. There's just no creativity or anything on that left-hand side at all. And as much as we want more creativity on the right, or maybe you want somebody else on the right other than Odegaard, the reality is like there's nothing on the left. Like there's nothing. Our two most creative players on the right. But to me, that's insane, man. Let's see. Brep says, how are we feeling if Skelly's in midfield? We'll see if he gets there. Let's see. Samuel says, honestly, Jess, I don't know how you keep on with this Odegaard doesn't have a free role thing. If someone has the freest of roles within a constrained system, it doesn't really make sense to remark on freedom. If you think Odegaard has a free role, or he's in a position where he's playing as a 10 and he has license to do everything and go around and be more creative, then fair enough. We don't see the game the same way. We play a system that's very much so position based and nobody moves. So the only person that moves is Odegaard, but he doesn't move in creative ways to the left-hand side to create more or anything. He moves back to support the tempo control because neither one of Rice or Partey have the ability to control the tempo. So if you think he has a free role, good. You think he has a free role. Fair enough. We don't watch the same games. Mohammed says, if we don't sign a creative 10, just sign a striker and wingers and DMs. Why don't we play a Barclays 4-4-2? It might work. Space Time says, the biggest signing we can make is an overlapping left back. Don't kill me, but it'll possibly be as much effect as a forward signing. Plus, it allows Miles to transition to midfield. I think that would be a cool signing to make because we don't have any overlaps on the left. So yeah, that'd be cool to get an overlapping left back. Brap says Odegaard is locked in the shackles of Arteta ball, just like the rest of us. No, he has a free role and he can do whatever he wants, and everybody else is stuck. He's the only one that has a free role. We're watching the same games. Is creative meaning that they can't beat their man? Odegaard is Arsenal's only creative player. Mata says the freest position player we have is probably Raya. Yeah. It's just a tough one. But one thing I'll never, ever accept is this idea that because Odegaard had a poor season, that makes Havertz an important and great player for Arsenal. I don't know where they got that, but it's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So yeah, but thank you guys so much for all the super chats. There's 1,300 of you guys watching on multiple platforms, and I really appreciate it. I know that this was kind of like more of like a debate, and we have those on this stage, on this channel. It is what it is. It's been a kind of weird day of like good news and strange news, but hopefully now that Zubimendi is done, we can move on to the forwards and all that kind of stuff. We get some clarity on Sesko and Gyökeres, and yeah, we move from here. Let's talk on the next one. I will let you guys know about the like Diallo says, like any family, we fight and we laugh. Exactly. If if you've been here for a while, that's what happens on the channel. But yeah, I'm thinking you guys will know. I will probably set up the sell and loan for tonight for after the final. And if you guys can make it, that's great. If you guys can't, you can watch it on replay. But I think I want to get it done today so that I can try to do some sort of review tomorrow, because I want to get all this stuff out of the way so that we could just do transfers starting next week. So Diluted hates me. He hasn't replied. So yeah, I don't know where he is, but yeah, we will figure it out. We will get it done no matter what. But like and subscribe on your way out. Thank you guys so much for your super chats, and we will talk later on today. Bye, guys.